우리 무똥님들 양하. 오늘 영상은 제 최미국 레드와인이 바뀐 계기가 된 퀸테사 와인 테이스팅 녹화분을 보여드릴게요. 줌으로 진행한 와인 테이스팅입니다. 재밌게 봐주세요.
Yang Yunju, she is the winner of Korea Sommelier Concours in French Wines 2016 by Sopexa at the youngest female champion. She's running YouTube wine channel, Yang Watch TV, and she's the educator of WSA Wine Academy, WSET, and she's also taking a very important role as an ambassador, wine ambassador for Concha y Toro brands.
Oh, really? Wow,
yeah,
fantastic.
she's actually an influencer. So yeah, we are very glad to invite her here to this morning.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Thank you for making the time to share Quintessa with us.
So the idea was like fantastic.
Yes,
So
This is Augustin and Valeria Huneeus. This is a picture of them as they were first establishing and planting Quintessa. Augustin and Valeria have a long history in the wine business. In fact, they are originally from Chile, as is Diego. Augustin got his start in the wine business in the 1960s as part of a group that purchased a winery that was not doing very well in the market at the time. And he entered into the business, fell in love with vineyards and winemaking, and built that winery up to be the largest exporter of Chilean wine. And that winery is Concha y Toro. So Augustin had his start with Concha y Toro in the 1960s and kind of saved that winery. Then Augustin and Valeria left Chile in the 1970s and ended up in the United States, where Augustin was, first he worked with Seagram's International as a wholesaler, and then they moved to California to be partner and president of Franciscan Wine Estates. So when this picture was taken in the late 1980s, Augustin was managing Franciscan, which was a group of wineries, Franciscan Estate, Estancia, Mount Veeder Winery, amongst others. And Valeria, his wife, was managing the vineyards. Valeria has a background in viticulture. And they wanted to find a project that they could work on together to be a family legacy and to utilize all of their knowledge and experience in the wine business. And Valeria happened upon this estate in Rutherford that had never been planted before. It's this almost hidden estate along Silverado Trail across from Auberge du Soleil. And there was a lake in the middle and some rolling grassy hillsides, some cows, and oak woodlands. And she walked onto it and immediately felt that this was the place, that this is a place that has potential to be a great wine estate of the world. And Valeria was able to convince the owners, who were not living on the property or doing anything with it, that she would be a good steward of the land. And so Quintessa was founded in 1989. And in this picture, you can see Augustin and Valeria. I mean, I love this because they're thinking about the future. They are working on planting the vineyard. And I think that you can see, for me, 30 years, I see that the 30 years of time that has passed since this picture was taken, and can see everything that has been created on the Quintessa estate. So this is Quintessa now. We still fulfill the founding vision of Augustin and Valeria Huneeus, which is that this estate has a soul, has a character, and has the potential, and now is, a great wine estate of the world. And what makes Quintessa unique, I think, is this founding vision, but it's also of course, the geology and the terroir. And in this picture, I think you have a very good sense of that. From from how we are looking to the north here, and this is the center of the Quintessa estate. Along the right-hand side here is the Vaca Mountain Range, which is the eastern boundary of Napa Valley. And farther away in the distance on this left-hand side is the Mayacamas Range. So those are the two mountain ranges that define Napa Valley. And right down here in the middle, oh, where's my, lost my little, sorry. Oh, move forward, okay. I lost my little pointer, there it is this right here, that's the Napa River. Quintessa runs all the way from the Vaca Mountain Range, from the Silverado Trail to the Napa River. And we encompass two of those three main geologic features of Napa Valley. The other thing I want you to notice here in this picture is that Quintessa contains a series of hillsides that radiate out from that Vaca Mountain Range. That's a very unique topographical feature for Napa Valley and directly relates to the terroir that we have on the estate. It's incredibly diverse. It's almost like a microcosm of Napa Valley itself. And the reason that we have these hillsides is that at one point, the Vaca Mountain Range, right here on the right-hand side of this picture, reached a height and a weight and an angle that it couldn't maintain. And there was a massive landslide probably about 5 million years ago off of the Vaca Mountain Range. And that landslide is right here in these eastern hills you see. When that happened, the earth behind it rippled up like water because it had to move somewhere. And that's what's caused the central hills and the western hills of Quintessa. And as we have worked with this estate now for 30 years and followed the character of the vineyard and the character of the wines that are made from these different parts of the property, we see some very strong differences in what I call our terroir units, our different parts of the Quintessa estate. I'll explain them using this map. So here in this map, you are now looking to the east. So the Vaca Mountain Range is on the top and the Napa River is on the bottom. You have a drawing of the vineyard showing the vineyard blocks, and there's 26 different vineyard blocks on the property, all planted to respect the natural contours of the land. And Valeria Huneeus designed our vineyard. There's three colors that we're using in this map, and these three colors represent these three main terroir units, these three main areas of different geology and different soils that result in distinctive character of the Quintessa wine. Along the eastern hills, right up here along the Silverado Trail, is a white volcanic ash. So this is a pure volcanic terroir that has very little clay and has its origin purely from the Vaca Mountain Range. And when you taste Quintessa, the length and the finish that has the texture of fine chalk, that's from this part of the property. Then in red here along the center of the property that goes around the Dragon's Terrace is the central hills and the western hills of Quintessa. And these are very interesting terroirs. They are mixed volcanics with varying amount of minerals. So you have volcanic rocks, the white volcanic ash, you have some clay, some sandy soil, and some older alluvium. There's cobbles and there's gravels in here. And of course you have the elevation because these are the two main hillsides. And from this part of the property, you get the core of Quintessa. So the combination of red and black fruit the intensity and depth of flavor and the, I would almost call it like a mountain tannin. There's a tightness to the tannin and a minerality that comes from this part of the property. And then finally, at the bottom of this map is the Napa River. And we have a part of the property that we call the bench. The bench is different than the rest of the property. It is more like the typical Rutherford vineyard. And you know, we're sort of famous for utilizing the term Rutherford dust. So the bench block is where we get this Rutherford dust character. And what that means is that this is a deeper clay loam. We have density and power from the clay in this soil, but we also have a fleshiness. So it has a softness to it that you get from the influence of the river. This is the part of Quintessa that allows it to be pleasurable to drink young. And so as a winemaker working with this estate, it's incredible because you get to work with, oops, didn't need to go that far. You get to work with so many different characteristics on one estate, all farmed with the same intention, which is to express the character of the Quintessa soul, the character, the true character of the estate. And here, these three soil pits, you can just see using just at a quick look how different they are and how different the wines are going to taste from these different blocks. The bench block, that's the part by the Napa River, is here on the left-hand side. And you can see it's a dark brown soil. There's very few rocks in this pit. And the vine's roots are strong and deep. So that translates into that power and that density. The Corona is the Western Hills, and it's a reddish soil. That's a higher iron content. That's the minerality in Quintessa. And then Dragon's Terrace, it has these different volcanic rocks, but the soil is a bit more brown. That shows in the suppleness of the tannin. And then finally, Montcalise is the part that's all the way on the Eastern Hill. And that's a fairly white soil. That's a pure white ash. And that is that finish, that length, and that fine, chalky texture of Quintessa. In order to respect the place and to farm it carefully, we utilize organic biodynamic techniques. So this is something that is pretty unique. Another unique factor about Quintessa is that when Valeria Huneeus found the property, it had never been farmed before. So this was virgin land. And she designed the vineyard and planted it in 1990 and 91. And because she felt such a direct connection to the place and felt that it had, there's no other way to describe it, that it has a soul, she did not want to utilize any harsh chemicals. And so from the very beginning, Quintessa has been farmed organically. No synthetic chemicals have ever been used on the estate. And in 1996, she got introduced to biodynamic practices and the biodynamic philosophy and started introducing that into Quintessa. And the idea of biodynamics is to create is to interact with the farm as an organism. So the farm, the Quintessa estate, is a complete organism, and it includes the minerals underground and the plants living on the property that cannot leave, and the animals on the property, and that us, the humans on the property, our responsibility is to mediate all of those interactions and to steward the translation of the character of the place into this wine. And I think it's an incredibly powerful philosophy for winemaking, because wine has that ability And any great wine really captures the soul of a place. So farming with a philosophy really helps us as wine growers and as winemakers to make that connection even clearer. And all of the practices that we use in biodynamics are involved and focus on promoting health of the soils. So we're not implementing any synthetic fertilizers, we're utilizing compost. We are promoting the natural health and resiliency of the system so that the grapes that we harvest, this is actually a picture from last harvest from 2021, are going to express themselves in the best and most transparent way possible. We have a very skilled and experienced team at Quintessa. So in this picture, you can see this is our core team. On the right-hand side, that's Martin Galvan. He's our vineyard manager, and he lives on the property and has worked with Quintessa for 20 years. So he knows every inch of the property. He knows every vine and what they're capable of. And on the left, you'll see Rodrigo Soto, who is our estate director. And Rodrigo has spent his entire career in wine working with organic and biodynamic farms, working at Benzinger in Sonoma and Veramonte and Nayan in Chile. And he comes to us and helps us integrate all of the pieces together, utilizing these biodynamic and organic practices. Part of being an estate winery is having an estate vineyard. And I think as a winemaker, that's one of the biggest benefits, is that you are constrained to the single estate. When you have a more challenging year, you can't look outside and just go to another region and get different fruit. You are focused and intimately involved in this one estate. And you have a winery, and this is the Quintessa winery, which is custom designed to match the character of the Quintessa soils. And so I wanted to add this picture because there is something very unique about the Quintessa terroir. And we have been able to follow that through and to express that in the wine because of the technology that we use inside the winery and the fermentation vessels that we use. So we use a combination of stainless steel fermenting tanks and concrete fermenting tanks. So on the right, you see these are custom designed concrete fermenters, and they are specifically designed with a local stonemason to match the character of our estate, and particularly those white soils that I was mentioning, the ones along the eastern hills. They have a tendency and a character of having that chalky texture, this beautiful, fluffy, fine chalk. Fermenting them in the concrete tanks brings out a level of suppleness in that chalk. So it accentuates the best character of the vineyard and highlights it and allows it to show itself in its best light. And I think that's really what a winemaker's job is to understand place and to interpret it, to allow the place to show itself in its best light. So I get to use these tanks that we installed. The original tanks on the left-hand side are from 2002 when the winery was built. And on the right-hand side, those concrete tanks, we designed and installed in 2018, utilizing that newer knowledge of the estate. Because it's such a diverse estate, I was mentioning the different soil types. There's also different aspect and elevation. We have vineyards planted at all points of the compass. We have a lot of small sections of the estate to keep separate. There's 26 blocks planted on the Quintessa estate to 5 red varieties: Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Petit Verdot, and Carmenere. But because of that diversity that we find in the underground and then the diversity in the above ground as well, we will section the vineyard out into even smaller pieces. So in 2019, the vintage that you're tasting, I made 85 separate picking sections of the estate. And the harvest itself took about 6 months, or sorry, not months, 6 weeks, because of that amount of diversity that we see. We carry everything separately from the vineyard through the fermentation in the winery, and then come together over the course of 2 years as the wine is aged in barrel in our caves to work with the blending process. And I am lucky enough to be joined with Michel Roland on the blending process. He's worked with the estate since 2000. And we meet together 3 times a year to work on the blend. And we only make one wine, the red wine from the estate, Quintessa. After we have bottled the wine, it's unfiltered, and then we package it and prepare it, let it rest 1 additional year in bottle before release. So the 2019 that you're tasting was bottled about a year ago and has been resting at the Quintessa estate in bottle in preparation for its release. Do you guys have any questions about the winemaking before I talk specifically about this vintage? Which, I mean, I'm so in love with this vintage. I'm very happy with it and excited to be sharing it.
Really all clear. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So 2019 is a very special vintage. It is an absolutely exceptional expression of our estate. We had almost perfect weather throughout the growing season. And one of the really important parts of a Napa season, which I don't think we talk enough about, is the winter and how important it is, how much rain we get in the winter, what time it is, and whether or not it's a warm winter or a cold winter. These things affect the fertility of the soil and, of course, how we start the growing season, the amount of energy that the canopy has, the amount of energy that the vines have to start the season. In the winter of 2019, we had an average amount of rainfall, which is good, I'm going to speak in inches, about 20 inches. And more than just a good amount of rain, the timing of those rains were very perfect. So we had rain that fell right before the vines were awakening. So the soils were nice and wet as the vines were going through bud break, and that allowed them to carry a lot of the energy from the soil into their canopy and grow these beautiful canopies. Then we got also very lucky and had almost perfect weather during bloom and fruit set. So we had a nice even crop that was very uniform. So having a shorter bloom time and a shorter fruit set, when you have ideal weather during those periods, the vines are very uniform. And that makes for a nice ripening and a nice vintage, because it's like, from the winemaker's point of view, it's a lot easier to make the ideal and make the perfect picking decision when everything is uniform. And so in 2019, we had perfect weather during these key moments. We did not have any frost, and we also did not have any heat events. The other main moment in Napa Valley that can define a vintage is the heat waves that we usually receive around the end of August and beginning of September. Well, in 2019, we didn't receive any of those. And so it was a very almost mild and even growing season with a long finish. And so every part of the Quintessa estate showed itself in its best light. And during the harvest period, we were able to make every picking decision and space out the harvest exactly as we wanted without any of these kind of accelerating factors. So all of these things together, plus the 20 years and 30 years of experience that we have had as a team in understanding our estate, the winery that's designed to match that estate, everything came together to create, I think, the most transparent expression to date of the Quintessa estate. When I taste the 2019 Quintessa, first off, when I smell it, I could smell that combination of black and red fruit. And then there's that dried herbal savory notes. It smells like the surroundings. We have California bay laurel trees. We have wild sage. We have our oak woodlands. And when you walk through those oak woodlands and you step on the leaves, they crackle up, and there's this character of the California winds. That is one of the things that I smell in the 2019 Quintessa. And then when I put it in my mouth, I can distinguish, for me, very clearly and very precisely, all of the character and the energy of the terroir at Quintessa. So I feel that minerality, that dark fruit and almost iron character of the Western Hills, of that Corona block. There is so much difference in the geology, in the terroir of the different parts of the estate. And because are the hillsides. So Joe, I'm not alone in thinking that this is a beautiful wine. Like I said, I love this vintage because I think that for me, when I taste it, I am immediately transported to the Quintessa estate. Like I feel it invokes in me all the same feelings that I get when I walk around the estate. But I think it's also because this is a presentation for a release. Did want to share the fact that I am not alone in that, and that that Quintessa also has been well received by the critics in preparation for the 2019 release. We have submitted the wines and received some very nice reviews.
The wine just tastes amazing. So your explanation, yeah, because I often, when I taste Napa Valley's or Rutherford Hills red wine, I have to compare with Bordeaux's Chateau, because the blending is almost same and the winemaking process is almost same. So when I'm tasting this Quintessa 2019, it reminds me of blends of left and right things from Bordeaux. And if you don't mind, I named the specific chateau. I can taste Chateau Latour and Palmer, even Cheval Blanc and Chompecane, and they're all based on organic and biodynamic farming. I love the energy in this wine from the organic farming, and the fruits is there. It's all live. Amazing.
Oh, thank you. I mean, that's incredible to hear that you were thinking of those estates. Palmer for me is one of my favorite wines, and one of my inspirational wines. You know, Quintessa and Napa Valley is a very different terroir, but what we can do is, I think that we have a different terroir, right? We are volcanic, and it's not all about our gravels, but we have a terroir defined by porosity. So defined by how well, and the changes in these different parts, and the volcanic influence, the volcanic rocks influences how well the water drains in our region. And so we have that ability to create wines that have power. And in that respect, I think they are like Pauillac, with the very powerful wines, but they have a suppleness as well. When for me, like with the young wines, especially the 2019, I feel it's the tannin is strong, like the mouthfeel is strong, but the finish, it reminds me of fruit. And for me, that's like a supple, it's not, if the wine is dry, it's not sweet. It's not like an overripe, but there is this finish of fresh fruit. And it brings me back to the fruit that I smell on the nose. For me, that's I think something very special and very distinctive about our terroir, to have this kind of suppleness in the tannin so young.
Nice.
So much. And Miss Yang, do you have any more questions to Rebecca or Diego?
Yes, one more question. Since this Quintessa winery started the winery 1990s, I guess the potential of wine aging is already checked. So, question to winemaker Rebecca. Do you like Quintessa's old vintage wines, like over 10 and 20 years wine?
I do. So I have been lucky enough to taste every vintage of Quintessa in verticals more than one time. And it's, what is so interesting to me is that the wines have changed. The oldest wines were made from younger vines, but the estate, that true character of Quintessa has remained consistent. So even though there has been evolutions in the vine age, some evolutions of our understanding of the place, of course, and our vision remained consistent. But you know, as people, of course, we've evolved. Let's say we've gained more knowledge, but that true character of Quintessa is so strong. For me, that's what I call true terroir. When the footprint, the signature of the estate, the signature of the terroir is so strong that it shows through even when the vines are young. It shows through when the wine is young or when the wine is old. So it's always fun to be able to taste that long vertical. Where I personally think that I guess in the way that I live my life, my favorite time to drink Quintessa is about 10 years of age, because I do love the fresh fruit characters. I love the primary notes, but I also like to see the secondary characteristics, that bottle development, those savory, earthy notes coming through. And so for me, at about 10 years, you have a perfect balance of those two things. So that's my personal preference for aging.
Thank you.
But that's very, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, guys, for your time. Really, really appreciate. Thank you for your support as well. We hope to be back in the market soon. I mean, we're planning with Rebecca a trip to Japan.